So welcome to episode 3 of our weekly hang. We've got Nick Granville all the way from Wellington, myself in Auckland. And welcome to another episode, Nick. And I'm guessing you had a busy weekend by the look of it.
I did, yeah. I had the double drum funk gig with Darren and Jacob and Leo, which was so much fun, man. The band just came out straight from tune number 1, was just like firing. It was really, really loud. Man,
Yeah.
2 drummers. And it's funny, we got there and Darren, being the monster that he is, he goes, "Oh, I forgot there's an in-house drum kit." He goes, "But I bought my drum kit too. So how about we do 2 bass drums?"
Wow.
So not only do we have 2, and then Jacob, the other drummer, Jacob Randall, who's a monster as well, in some ways probably has just as much chops as D, if not more. He was like, "I got a double kick pedal in the car." So it just got ridiculous really quick, but it was so much fun.
Yeah. Did you have to wear earplugs?
I put my earplugs in for the first song, and then I was like, I just hated it. I was like, I couldn't. All of a sudden, I couldn't hear the guitar as I wanted to hear it, and the cymbals were sounding mushy, and I was just like, I could either save my ears or I'm gonna hate the gig. So I was like, yeah, I'll just put up with it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, the choices you sometimes have to make, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, you had a weekend off, didn't you?
I did actually. I've got a mate visiting. He's got a gig at the Trust Stadium on the weekend.
Oh,
So
cool.
he came in a bit early to hang with us for a bit. He's the drummer I play with back in India in Black Star Blues, so we had a good time catching up. So yeah, we got out a bit, went down to the beach, but the weather wasn't that good. But yesterday we had a lovely day, being the Waitangi Day holiday, and that we made the most of. And yeah, how's things in Wellington weather-wise? Is it?
Muggy. It's really muggy
yeah.
right now. Like right now, I feel like I'm going to be sweating all over the camera. It's pretty muggy hot, but it's generally been about 23 to 25 degrees every day, so that's pretty hot, you know. And I'm an indoor person, you know. I'm doing a lot of stuff indoors in my studio here, as you can see behind me.
Do you find the guitars drift with the temperature changes?
Definitely. Yeah, it's it can be a real problem. So they really need to set up about twice a year, but I get them done about once every 5 years because I'm just too cheap. And everything else I try and butcher it myself.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have a schedule of how often you do your guitars?
If the neck moves a lot in this direction, then I'll probably just get out the truss rod adjustment, which on these vintage style Strats is a pain because you got to take the neck off and do it. There's no.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but to be honest, I haven't really needed to do it yet at this point. It got set up by Ramsey when he put in the stainless steel frets. So touch wood, from that point, I haven't really had to do much adjustment. Even the tuning's pretty stable. Like once in a while, I'll just check it and make sure that G string is in tune. And then I've got this, which I'm always putting in the nut. It's basically graphite from an art supply store.
Oh, that's a good
Just
idea.
do a little bit of it in the.
I do the same thing, but I don't use I use the good old fashioned pencil.
Oh yeah.
Pencil lead, but an actual graphite thing from a graphics store would be way better because it's much easier to get it in there, right?
Yeah, and it's due also down to the ratio of lead and clay, which they normally use, and this is pretty much pure graphite.
Ah.
Yeah, because if you pick it up, it leaves like those things on your hand.
Oh yeah,
Those
yeah, of
marks.
course.
Yeah. So anyway, that's been keeping the. I guess most tuning problems you can trace it to the nut, if not the bridge saddles and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And anytime I move the trem and I hear these pinging sounds, and I know, okay, it's time to grease the nut. But coming back to your point, I think it's usually the Gibsons that need a truss or adjustment, like probably twice a year. When it starts getting into the middle of winter, the necks will start going that way.
Mahogany neck, right?
Yeah. The Strats, for some reason, the maple, I think, moves a lot less.
Oh, I totally agree.
Especially these, one-piece maple necks, they're pretty stable for most of the time. I think sometimes when I go to India and it's a little hotter there, that's when I may need to, do a bit of an adjustment.
Have you ever seen a Strat with a broken neck?
A broken neck?
Yeah.
No, not really, to be honest. I've
No.
seen plenty of snapped Gibsons.
Gibson's. So that kind of says it all about the amount of movement, because it's just not, mahogany's just not as solid as hard rock maple, which is what your neck is made of, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
I wanted to talk about something today that, when you ask about how pedals sound, does it matter if you're putting them into a clean amp or a driven amp or an amp on the verge of breakup? So what I've got right now plugged into is the custom audio OD100, and it's a channel switcher, a Fender, twin kind of a clean and a Marshall Plexi-ish overdrive channel. So I've got a few pedals, and thought it'd be cool to just have a listen to what they sound like. So this is basically the clean channel of the amp. That's on my neck single coil on the bridge humbucker. Maybe full tone up. Drop it down to around 4-ish. And here's your drive channel. That's your neck pickup. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the bog standard RC booster. Can't get more vanilla than that, but it is a really good sounding pedal. So this is the clean channel without it, and this is with it. Right, so I've got the level up a bit, so it's kind of boosting into the amp. I'm gonna turn the volume down now to around 8. That's like when I normally start with the clean sound. So if you combine the volume on full into the clean channel without the RC, and you can the RC on and the guitar volume backed off around 8 or so. It's a similar amount of sparkle, but a little bit more body.
Yeah.
The mids come forward a bit.
The interesting thing about that straight away that I notice is how much more complex the mids become, don't they?
Yeah.
They're not just like it's a much more complex kind of harmonically as well, complex sound.
Yeah, because there is a bit of saturation happening on the pedal itself
And compression.
But then the pedal's also hitting the front end of the amp harder, so that first valve is going to add some more harmonic content to compared to with the pedal off. Now if you go to the humbucker, you can almost get it to crunch up a bit.
Yeah.
Or you can back it off like 7 or so. And that in between the middle and the humbucker, that sounds really nice. So normally what I would do is, like, if you had to have a chorus on or something, like that would be the pickup position I'll be going for. Okay, so that's your RC into the clean. Now into the driven channel. Let's say this is without the pedal. This is with the RC. The first thing I notice is I have to really lighten up my touch.
Yeah.
If I'm getting the same amount of gain. But then if you want to, dig in, it'll bark back at you. And the neck pickup sounds really cool like that.
It makes you play differently, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just straight away you could see your whole touch and your whole way that you were creating sound changed then. It was just totally different.
It's totally dependent upon what's coming out of the amp, obviously, but it makes a bigger difference than you would, think. And the only time is when it wouldn't is when maybe I have the monitoring level really soft.
Yeah.
Then you can't really,
Which is what always happens, right? When you get to a gig and the sound guy or girl says, "Can you turn your amp down and just use it as a monitor?" And then you're like, then what happens is you lower your level. Yeah. And you end up playing really hard to try and balance to hear yourself the way you were.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you get no dynamics and your tone sucks.
You have
nobody wins
to go above, kind of, you felt like you've got like almost like a muzzle.
All that ends up happening is they can turn you up more, but now they're turning up a crappy sound, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because how you're monitoring it is really important.
It is. Even sometimes I find like when I'm on headphones, the level I have my headphones at, obviously it's going to sound better louder. but I have to be
Yeah.
careful that I don't turn it up past a certain point where I'm like,
Thresh your ears, yeah.
going to deafen myself at some point. There's a fine line, it starts sounding really nice at some point. And like, oh, maybe that should just back it off a little bit. Anyway, so that's your RC. Check this bit out now. So this is like about as clean as it would get with the overdrive channel, right? So now with the pickup, say around 3 or 4, I'm going to put the RC off and put
So hang on a second. When you said that as clean as the pickups are going to get on the overdrive channel, where is your volume on your guitar? Is it 3?
3.
So right 3 is as clean as you get, and any lower than that, you just...
Any lower than that, you get diminishing returns. So like, say this is 3. That's like 2. It starts disappearing.
It's just thin, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not
3 is like that sweet spot where it's still clean, but it's still full. Something like that, right? So then let's put the RC off, and this is the Roger Mayer Voodoo one. Now this
great
gives you another level of, clean sparkle. So very often if I'm just using the Marshall, and the Marshalls to the point of breakup, the Voodoo one comes on to give me a clean sound. So this is the full out volume on full. Right, that's gonna crunch it up. Now let's back the volume to like say around 6 and put the Voodoo one on.
Yeah.
Now it's on 4. And it's a great clean sound, man. I don't have any problem playing like even funk lines.
And it's probably bringing back the sparkle that you're losing by turning down.
Exactly.
Turning down the pot.
It's the anti-tone suck pedal. And which is probably why it's still on Landau's board. It keeps disappearing for a while and he tries something else and then he comes back to it. It's never really gone away. And the same thing with me. I haven't really, ever fallen out of love. There's times where like you have to fight it a bit to massage it, to get it to work with everything else. But the only criticism I have against it is sometimes that low end can be a little too much. Like it starts almost like getting into fuzzy territory. And sometimes there may be a little too little mid-range with a clean Fender style amp, which is already mid-scooped.
Yeah.
So I have a friend, Stefan, he's in Nelson, and he makes pedals under the name Big Noise Pedals.
Yeah, I know Stefan.
So he made me a really nice clone of that, but he added the mid-range and a bass cut, which is perfect. And that's what's on my gigging board. And since it's based off the Voodoo one, we called it the Slight Return.
He's a clever guy, man. He's great. Yeah. I've got a few of his pedals back there that I've demoed and different stuff, and I really like it. He gave me his Golden Syrup harmonic tremolo. Mm-hmm. It's a really nice trem. It's got that almost uni vibe harmonic trem thing going on. Yeah, he's a clever guy.
Yeah, he definitely knows also like components, like which ones to choose. I have no clue like which capacitors and everything, but he really knows where to source stuff from, like immaculate stuff. The next pedal I want to try out is this Tube Screamer. So let's say we are into our clean channel, and again no pedal on. So now Tube Screamer is the little TS Mini, very cheap little pedal. But
those are great.
It does sound pretty good, man.
I got one of those. They're awesome.
The thing is, for me, I have to really want that sound for me to pull out a Tube Screamer into a clean channel. But into the drive channel, let's see, no pedal. Here's the
There
Tube
it is.
Screamer. And with the chorus, it's really cool. Like instant 80s.
Interesting thing, the Tube Screamer. I've kind of in some ways have fallen out of love with the Tube Screamer because its whole thing is it cuts a lot of the bottom end and it's all mid-range, which, for like I play primarily through Fender style amps, I got my two Victorias back there, and they're basically clean tweed amps, but being tweed amps, they're very mid-forward already, and I find with tube screamers they just get too much. But what you're doing there is interesting because it's like the tube screamer is actually tightening up the bottom end of that sound, and it's giving it that mid punch.
Mid-push.
So it
It
actually
actually works great on single coils because makes it more into humbucker territory.
exactly, because that's the thing of it with a single coil, isn't it? They don't have a huge amount of bottom end like a humbucker, and they tend to have a lot more upper mids and sparkle, and so the tube screamer kind of fills in that thing. I mean, it worked for Stevie Ray Vaughan, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing with tube screamers too, is you have to have an amp that's like a tube screamer into a dead clean Fender Twin on 2 sounds awful. But if you have a tube screamer into a Bassman that's cranked, it's glorious.
Yeah, you need to have, I think, a little bit of that power tube, working, if not overdriving, just like working healthy. Then that kind of smoothens out all those, weird frequencies on the tube screamer. But like say with the pedal off, the amp goes like that much amount of bottom end. So not really conducive to going chugga chugga chugga. But with that pedal on, then it just tightens out the whole thing. That sort of thing.
A lot of metal guys do that for that reason. They put a tube screamer as their boost for exactly what you just did.
Or better still, the Boss SD1, which is pretty much the same thing, but I think it's got asymmetrical clipping in it. And finally, I wanted to put on the the Maxon SD9. Sorry. Okay, so it's a very interesting pedal. I've actually made a video about it on the YouTube channel. But into a clean amp, let's say this, with the Maxon on, it doesn't have the mid-range push of the tube screamer, but it can kind of grind on those, those lower mid kind of things, especially with some delay, So, in between fuzz and distortion, something like that. But into the drive channel, I think that is like one of the best sounding boost pedals I've used. So, and now you can actually turn that volume down to say around 5. It's so dependent upon how you pick, And very often I do things like going. So as the note's sustaining, you pull up the volume control. Yeah, that sort of thing. So that was my little spiel on different pedals, because with the 2-channel amp you're kind of getting twice the amount of sounds. But it's a bit of a learning curve how to get the pedals to work well with both channels, how to set both channels so it works well with all. And there's one last thing I wanted to show you is the full tone octafuzz. So that's into the clean channel, right? I'm setting it on minimum fuzz, maximum level. Into the drive channel now. So if you're trying to get those Hendrix sounds into a clean amp again, may not really be the best thing. But one thing you can do is put an overdrive pedal after that, so this smoothens all those.
That's it though. As soon as you put that fuzz into the drive channel, that was the sound, right?
Yep.
It's interesting how that works, isn't it? Because my whole thing with overdrive, the way I've always worked is sort of a clean amp, so like a Fender style amp of some sort, and then I use pedals to kick it over. That's what I've done pretty much my whole career, right? And it's sort of predicated on the whole idea that the amp has to be at breakup point, and then the pedal pushes it over. And
Yeah.
if I can't get the amp to the breakup point, it's just hard work, you know what I mean? And it's really uninspiring. It's one of the reasons actually that I use the modeler so much now, because I just got so sick of that, like, you know, having to have the amp down real low where it just sounds bad, and then you hit it with even like a BB preamp, one of my favorite overdrives, into a bone clean, dry, clean amp. It's just like, it's so uninspiring. Do you know what I mean? And it's so funny enough, in the modeler right now, I've just set up a sound, and this is a Fender, they call it a vibrato Lux, or Vibralux, basically. I like changing the different cabinets. I've got a 212 cabinet, an idea I stole from Leon Todd. So, you know, think of like a Vox AC30 model, and you would think, well, what AC30 would have two blue Celestians. Well, what about AC30 but put a 4x10 cabinet on the end of it, you know, something like that, or a 4x12 or something. So anyway, this is a vibrato Lux, a Fender Vibralux, but into a 212 cab, and then with a BB pre into it. You hear it cleans up really well. My daughter's in the room next door asleep. It's 9:30ish at night, and there's no way I could do that with my Bassman. Back there, I have a BB preamp. I have a Bassman, which is a similar kind of a style amp, and I mean, I just think that's so cool to be able to do that now. But there is something just that's so cool when you can just get the amp and you can get it in the sweet spot. You can drive it, and you can, But the key to it, at least in my opinion, is the amp has, whatever, be it a modeler, be it a real amp, has to be at that breakup point for it to sound any good.
Yeah. And very often that's like more like 6 or 7, you know, on a non-master volume amp. But if you try to do the same thing like with a master volume amp, you may actually just turn it up way past it's actually sounding good, you know, where it just starts getting too mushy and stuff. So again, like even with the Soldano, just after 6, it just goes whoomp on the master, and it just, you know, becomes really big and muscular. But if you go past that, it's diminishing returns. You're not really gaining anything past that.
Same with my little
flubbiness and saturation.
Same with my little Tweed Deluxe back there. You know, you sort of 3 is once it starts breaking up. There's nothing. It's weird. You turn it on to 1, no sound. Turn it on to 2, no sound. Go slightly above 2, and it's right there. They have a weird thing in the circuit where there's no sound at the low. All Tweed Deluxes do that. And then when you get to about 3, it starts to break up. By 4, it's at the sweet spot. And then after that, it just gets more dirty, and it gets to the point where it actually almost sounds like a fuzz pedal just on its own, but not necessarily. It booms and it gets all out of control. You know, the sweet spot seems, like I said, around 6 on that amp. 5, maybe 6 if you want a bit of drive, and then kick it over with whatever you want to do. You know, and same with the Bassman. But man, a Bassman on 6, it's not often I get to do that. Do you know what I mean? Without getting whinged at from the singer or whoever. You know, got a cool gig on Friday actually. This Friday, and with a singer piano player from Los Angeles, and I have a feeling he's going to be totally okay with guitar being really loud, because he's actually this guy Richard T. Beer is what he goes by. And he's on tour in Australia with Walter Trout at the moment. Do you know who Walter Trout is, the blues guitar player? Yeah, so he's on tour with him. So now I know Walter Trout plays loud. That guy, there's no way that guy doesn't play loud. So I'm thinking, well, that guy's going to be cool with me playing loud on the gig. You know what I mean? Like, or not obnoxiously loud, but playing it the way it's supposed to be played. Do you know what I mean? It's rock and blues music, you know what I mean? So I figure, well, I can do it on that one. So that's on Friday. We're going to have to do an hour gig. We're playing the Blues Club in Wellington. So it should be interesting. He's got some cool tunes, but yeah, I'll get the opportunity to play with a bit of gusto on that one, I think.
Yeah. Are you going to use the in-house deluxe, or are you going to take some gear with you?
I don't know. I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place. I want to use the little deluxe there, but man, last time I went there, it wasn't around. Like, it just wasn't there, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, we thought it was here, but it's not." And I'm like, man, I don't want to turn up and find there's no amp, and then you haven't got
Yeah.
time to get home and get an amp, and you're just screwed. So I'll probably take the Fractal, but I have got something new to show you.
Okay.
It's not actually mine.
Oh, the Fender powered speaker thing.
Yeah, this is the FRFR Fender Tonemaster. Now, I've seen people online saying these things hiss. There's been a whole lot of controversy around it that has this. This is the quietest amp I've ever played. Like, period.
It must be light as well. You're just holding it with one hand.
Yeah, it is. It's got a little 10-inch speaker and it's 1,000 watts.
Wow.
A little 10-inch. It's flat response. But the cool thing about it, because all these modeler amps, most of them just look like rehoused PA speakers. This one looks like a little amp, and it's got the old
Oh, the tilt back.
the tilt back thing so you can hear it.
Nice.
And it's, I don't know if I can do this while I'm holding that guitar. I'm gonna drop that guitar. You wait for it. But it's got EQ.
Okay, nice.
So volume, treble, middle, bass, and a cut switch. So that basically, the more you turn it up, the more it cuts treble.
Yeah.
So you could dial in your EQ and then you can just like dial it in for the room. And I'm like, man, they should need to do that with all of these modular amps, because the big thing is, I mean, I can do it on the menu. I can go in the menu and go blah, 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 and find like a tone. Like, but you get into each room and then you have to fiff and fart about. It's like the control's right there and you just go, and you're done. So
Yeah, it's super useful.
I'm just borrowing it at the moment. It's not actually mine, it's MusicWorks, but I'll give it a whirl. I thought I might actually make a YouTube video with it tomorrow and kind of put people's minds at ease about the whole hiss thing that I've seen online that people talking about it hissing. There's no hiss whatsoever. Like there's
I guess
nothing. It's
people
really quiet.
may need to just figure out gain staging sometimes, because you can, inadvertently cause hiss if you have like too much in one part of the signal chain.
Oh, I think people had it was hissing when they had nothing plugged into it.
Oh, weird.
Just from the speaker, and maybe there was a run of them that had some issue with them, but this, I don't know, this one is dead quiet. I'm actually thinking like a pair of these would be super handy for the modeler, just for like when I've got gigs with the loud ass double drummers that I play with,
Yep.
who are amazing, but they're loud, and you kind of need to have some reinforcement. Yeah.
Or maybe you can stack 4 of them, make like a whole
A 4x10
wall of amps. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy. It's not a crazy idea as it seems. Like the thing I found too is like with amps, the more speakers you have, the less volume you need. Because like I remember turning up with 2 amps one time to a gig, and the singer was like, "Oh, you're gonna play real loud now," and I said, "Oh, actually, it's probably going to be the opposite, because I'll hear myself better, and I'll need less volume now." Because it has more spread, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I definitely think that's the case, you know what I mean? I had a friend who lives in LA, and he's like, man, 2 amps is like minimum for him on gigs.
What's the craziest guitar rig you've ever had on stage?
Oh, gee. I used to do 2 4x12s,
Wow. Yeah.
and it was like total overkill to just go and play in some pubs in Wellington, in a rock band.
Yeah.
But I that gig that we did together in Palmerston North, one of those gigs there, I took my Bassman and my Deluxe and put them side by side. And actually, funny enough, I played 2 notes, and the sound guy comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder, and he goes, "Young man," he goes, "you're very big sounding in the room." And I was like, good. It's the way it's supposed to be, right? But so I had those, plus I bought both of my pedal boards and plugged one pedal board into the other. And at one point in the show, I had one pedal board had 3 or 4 overdrives, and the other pedal board had 2. And I just put all of them on at once, and I just went, strings of the other. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
But you don't have the same thing with a modeler. It's sort of, a modeler is what I use for the gigs when it has to be all a little bit more under control.
Yeah.
And then the amps, the big amps come out when it's like that shit wants to get a bit crazy, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, for the Bollywood gigs, the standard rider used to be to Mesa Boogie dual rectifier half stacks, and I would just run the modeler into the effects returns of both, and they would be in stereo, and then they would mic it, and then I started going direct, and I was like, I don't really need 2 amps behind it, so I just keep one as a backup. And sometimes I even split the cab and you only use two speakers out of the 4x12.
That's a good way to
So
do it, isn't
yeah,
it? Like I often run my fractal into the effects return of a hot rod DeVille if that's the only backline I can get. Turn the
yeah.
IR off on that. We've talked about that before, but anyway. But yeah, I've been curious about this thing to see, because these have been on order for like ages waiting to get them here, and I've been thinking, well, maybe that's the solution, because the big thing with that stuff is having good monitoring. You're probably hearing it through the interface right now, but it is going, yeah. So, and I just dusted this guitar off. It had some, I got some, I think, don't know if I told you, but I got some DR strings for this.
Yeah, you mentioned them, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, they offered me an endorsement with them. So they sent over a couple of sets to try. And man, the set of 11s felt like 12s on this, and they definitely didn't feel like coated strings. You know, coated strings have a little bit of a slipperiness. They felt like sandpaper or something. I guess if you're going from regular strings, you're probably used to it. But to me, I was like, man, I just couldn't. So I put them on this, and they're off now. I'm back to Elixirs because they're the best ones I've found.
I used to use DR for ages, like maybe 15 years back, the pure blues, nickel wound ones.
Those are the
And yeah, they sounded really nice, especially with a Strat and a Marshall. It kind of took a bit of the edge off. But then I found their consistency went down at a point, and then I just switched to the Daria, and that's what I've been with since.
yeah. I've
I
got a
think for
set
a
of
brief while I had an Ernie Ball endorsement, but their packages, especially in India, and I used to live next to the sea, they would corrode super quickly. So then I just switched back to
I got a
good
set
old
of
Daria.
those to try,
Oh, cool.
which are supposed to be like their version of a coated string. I'm totally about the coated strings now.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. Like it's, I had a set of strings on this for a year, and I'm not kidding you, like 1 year, and I was playing it all the time doing gigs, and I was like, I hope it doesn't break a string, but it's like I don't know, I want them just to last. And the thing I find with coated strings is they stay super consistent. Like from day 1 to day 30, they pretty much sound the same.
They're the hybrid cars of guitar strings.
That's brilliant. Uninspiring, but it gets you from A to B.
Yeah. And it saves you a ton of money as well.
Yeah, exactly.
My car's gone to the shop for a repair, and they've given me a hybrid as a courtesy car. And I just filled $50 of gas, and it's just been going on since a very long time.
Yeah, we've got two cars and a van, a camper van, but the two cars, one is a petrol and one's a hybrid.
Yeah.
And the little hybrid Toyota is like $70 to fill it up, and it lasts like a month type thing,
Yeah,
you know.
pretty
Whereas the
much.
petrol car is like $140, and you know, yeah,
Exactly.
doesn't last.
But the petrol car's got probably a bigger boot or something to put all the gear in.
Man, I
Same.
don't take that much gear anymore though. Eh? Like a lot of my gigs, I just take one guitar. Not normally this guitar, normally my AR 520, which is pretty much all I play nowadays, at least live. And then I take the Fractal, or I take a small pedal board, and then some kind of usually a speaker, or at the Blues Club last week they had one of those Yamaha speakers, the 15-inch, which sounded really good with the modeler through it. Like I was super happy with it. You know, it was like a big full sound, not too loud, not too bright. It's fine, some PA speakers, if you run through them, they're a bit bright, you know, but that one just really sounded good. And it's, man, I've like literally the backpack with the modeler in there and guitar and the gig bag on the side. But the big thing for me is like I pretty much just get one sound a lot of the time, you know, edge of breakup kind of tone, and then I swap guitars to get the different sounds. So like
Yeah.
I'll go from say this to the AZ, which is over there. I've got that Strat here. I don't really even take that out for gigs. It's actually not a very good instrument, but I think I told you about that. I just bought it in case people come and they want to have a lesson and they want to have a Strat. And occasionally I need a Strat in position to sound a certain way,
Right.
which that one does. So I'll use it for the occasional recording, but I take the AZ if I want that, or the Talman. I just put flatwounds on it, on a Tele style guitar. Which a Tele style guitar with flatwounds is awesome.
Edit.
I did. It was
Yeah,
great,
that's cool.
eh?
I just made
Man,
a
I
note
can't get
so I
enough
could
of
do
Tim
it.
Pierce. I watch everything with that guy.
Yeah.
That's what made me think of it. That's why I did it.
Exactly.
I'll grab it and I'll show you.
There he goes, playing those expensive chords again.
It just has a certain thing about it, you know what I mean? That's that other kind of slightly dead. And of course they feel fantastic to play with flat ones, you know.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is, when I put flat wounds on my 335 for a while, I kept playing the Day Tripper riff. I was like, yeah, that sounds just like it, because I knew the Beatles used to use flat wounds in the early days.
Exactly.
And then I looked it up, but then it said by the time Day Tripper came around, they had switched to round wounds by then.
Oh. I've got another jazz guitar back there that's got flat wounds on it. And that's a certain thing. I actually don't like flat wounds on a 335. Like I had flat wounds on that guitar that I was holding before, and I found that on that guitar, it's sort of like the thing that makes a 335 style guitar great was gone.
Yeah.
Whereas the thing with putting it on a Tele style guitar like this is, it's like it tames the kind of twanginess a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And it makes it sound old, and it makes it sound expensive. That's what Buddy used to say to me all the time. I was thinking
I should just get a cheap Strat or Tele and just put some flats on that, you know.
That's what that dirty old Squire's for that I paid $200 for from some kid. It's funny, man. When I got that guitar, this kid was really quick to get rid of it. He was like, "Yeah, don't." No, I didn't realize, because I didn't check it out until I got home, and then that the bridge had 2 cracks underneath it in the body. So I took it to Rob, and he was like, "Oh, I'll try and repair it." And he was like, "Ah." So I got my router in the garage out, and I routed out a chunk of wood and glued in a new bit of hard maple under the bridge, and then painted it black. You'd never know because it's underneath the bridge.
Nice.
And man, now the thing sounds pretty good. Like the sustain increased, the whole thing, you know. Because now it's got a really solid bit of wood under there.
Maybe that's something we can talk about, is like, what kind of mods would you do on a cheap Strat, and like to what point would you mod it before like the mods actually cost more than the guitar?
Yeah. I mean, I've never looked at it from a value point of things, because this guitar's modified, right? Every guitar I have just about is modified, right?
Yeah.
With this guitar, what did I do? New pickups, so these are Glens. I put new pots in. Because these come with those Asian smaller mini pots, which I don't like. I don't like the taper of them. More than anything, they sound fine, but they, you know, when you turn down from 10 to 6, it doesn't act like a CTS pot. So it's got two new pots and 3 new pickups. That's what they're really done on this guitar, on strap locks, which I do on every guitar.
Yeah.
But I think on a if you bought a cheap Strat and you want to make it good, I reckon the first thing you should do is put a new nut in it and get it cut properly.
Yep.
That's the first thing I would do. I would change out the pots and have like proper CTS pots in it, and then a really good setup and a really good fret job, and the guitar should like play pretty good. And you know, even the cheap single coil pickups can sound good.
Yeah.
Cheap humbuckers don't sound good, but cheap single coils can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say exactly the same thing. Even like the stock pickups would sound good with the pots and the capacitor. Sometimes they cheap out on those bits. Doesn't cost a lot to replace that. The trem block, I think, can benefit with a real steel block. Because the cheaper ones, they use like this weird zinc kind of alloy, which is like you just flick it, you'll see like it doesn't have really any acoustic qualities to it.
Yeah.
So like that steel block coming, and suddenly like you get like that
more
sustain. Yeah. There's a lot you can do to set it up yourself, and sometimes they come in with the frets not really polished. So just getting you get those fret polishing kits.
Man, I just do. You know what I do? And I got this from Rob Matthews, and I did it on this guitar at one point. What I do is I get like a painter's tape, and I tape off all the fretboard, and then Auto Sol, which you can get from Bunnings, and it's a metal polish, and I just get a cloth. And put a little bit of Auto Sol on there, and then just scrub the fret, and they come up and they shine like anything. It's freaking awesome. Yeah, it's worth taping them off, because otherwise the Auto Sol will actually get in the fretboard and make it look dirty, which is what happened to this guitar. That's why there's no finish on the fretboard anymore. It was starting to show a bit of wear anyway, so it was probably due to be a little bit. But yeah, I got Auto Sol over it, and then I was like, I want to do that again. But yeah, that went a long way. And if you've got a Dremel tool, it's even quicker, you know. But you can do it with just a cloth.
You should try that with it.
Yeah. The only problem with the Dremel tool is you've got to be super careful. If you slip, you'll put a mark. So just a cloth and just, you know. But it makes such a difference because the whole guitar feels slinky again.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it does. Yeah, and I think the setup bit as well, but the nut is definitely the first thing I would change.
After that, I probably would change the pickups. And I'd,
Yeah.
you know, set a Lola's or Lindy Fralins or Glenn locally, you know.
Yeah.
And it's something like that that's sort of going to get in the ballpark because that can make a huge difference changing pickups on a guitar.
Yeah, totally. That's I think also after that you're kind of looking at diminishing returns for, anything else that you'd want to do is probably draw the line there. Otherwise, I tell people like, you're going to spend so much modding it, you might as well just sell that guitar and then put your mod money and buy a better guitar.
Man, and I tell you, like, it doesn't have to be an expensive guitar to be, a friend of mine in the UK, Rob Harris. I don't know if you know of Rob, the guitar player. He's in that band Jamiroquai, and he played on. I saw him post about his first ever hit he played on was that song "Spinning Around," which was Kylie Minogue, and he did the funky octave things, and it was a Squier Strat. One of those JV ones, the ones, the Japanese ones that everyone liked. That, and he used that on some of those Jamiroquai things, what's that tune? What's it called? Little L. Which was great guitar player, great guitar playing. But yeah, there was a Squier Strat. I'm pretty sure that he played on that, and he played on a heap of stuff.
Yep.
Some of the big hits in the UK.
Yeah. There's a friend of mine back in India named Randolph. He plays for a band called Pentagram, one of my favorite bands when I was growing up. And he played this solo on this song called Voice. And I asked him, what guitar did you use? That sounds amazing. He was like, I used an acoustic guitar with the pickup on it. And he distorted it with some plug-in and everything like that. So he's definitely been like one of those guys which uses like the weirdest, gear choices, but he gets some great, fully legit guitar sounds with that.
Man, did you see that thing of Tom Bukovac and Dan Huff, the interview thing that he did on Tom Bukovac's channel? And Tom talked to Dan and he said, look, you taught me one thing that's really valuable. There's no such thing as a bad guitar tone, just a bad application.
Exactly.
And that's it. Like, if you've got the right application, the right thing, it can be really cool, And I've always looked at it that way. Even like the grungiest sound can be a certain thing, Although there definitely are bad applications of it. Some of those Lionel Richie things, I remember hearing them and just going, those guitar tones are like awful. Funny, eh?
Like that tone at the start of Steely Dan's Reeling in the Years.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like one of the worst guitar sounds ever, but it works so well in that application. But I don't think it'll have too many other uses,
It sounds almost DI'd, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
Like no amp.
I think it was some kind of a Ampeg bass amp that they turned up to full because there wasn't a guitar amp or something like that.
I think that was Elliot Randall, wasn't it? Did Elliot Randall play that?
It was him. I think Baxter played those bits, but the main solo, distorted solos were all Elliot Randall.
Yeah, because he lives in the UK, and I used to see him around London doing, like, he'd be doing gigs and stuff and shows and what have you, and a lot of it was based off the Steely Dan stuff, and he would be playing that, Yeah, good player for sure.
Yeah. We should probably do another episode and just talk about Steely Dan guitar solos. I'm sure we could fill an hour doing that.
Oh, man. What's your favorite Steely Dan solo? Do you have one?
It used to be Kid Charlemagne for the longest time. And I'd have to say a toss-up between Bodhisattva and My Old School now.
Interesting.
Yeah, I actually went and learned the Bodhisattva thing, and I picked up so many bebop licks inadvertently just learning that, with the because he doesn't bend, he goes. Why have I got my octave on? It's like, all that sort of thing, and it's so cool to throw that stuff into like a regular blues solo that you're playing,
totally.
Suddenly chucking a line from there.
I think Kid Charlemagne's still my favorite, though. I mean,
yeah.
I can't bend on this. I got a wound G. I mean, who phrases like that?
Yeah, exactly. That's the lick I always steal. The this one. Yeah.
I mean, that's just kills me. Eh? It's so great.
You know the outro solo as well. I have a soft spot for that one.
Oh yeah.
Even it's like straight up like very he phrases more like a blues player or like a gospel singer or something like that along those lines.
It's funny, like a few years ago, I was at the NAMM show and I played at the Vertex booth for Mason, and because I've known Mason a while, and he was doing this thing where he was doing it like calling it match your tone or something. Right. So he had a 69 335, same year as Larry Carlton's. He had a Dumble amp there, although we never actually used it, but I got to play through it for a minute, and I remember thinking, just sounded okay. It wasn't that, I mean, it was really low volume, but they had a little deluxe, because that's what Larry used on it. And then the whole thing they were trying to do was show that their little box, if you put it in the signal chain, then that's what got you to that point.
Yeah.
And I had to play the Kid Charlemagne solo with his, I think it's his Ultraphonics pedal it was that they were using through 69 335 into a deluxe. And I did about 20 takes and they filmed the stuff and all of that. And I remember like just playing that thing. And that's funny because there were different guitarists all day doing different songs, but another guitar player decided to do Kid Charlemagne as well. But two other guitarists had decided to do Kid Charlemagne as well. All three of us wanted to do that solo, right? And they said it was funny because I was the third of the three. For some reason, I was later in the day, and they said I was the only one who played the outro solo. Everybody just did that first main solo, and I was like, the outro solo is like, it's killing. It's awesome. But I mean, where I was going with that is, that song. And then, that's one verse. All of those chords are one verse, and we're not even at the chorus yet. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy.
There's a new Rick Beato interview with Michael O'Martian.
I watched it today, the piano player.
After we're done with this, yeah.
Man, it's gold. It's so good. I love that Rick does those interviews, because a lot of guys at sort of his level, they'd only really want to stick to like interviewing other famous people, you know what I mean? Like Sting or whoever he has on. But like Rick's pretty cool like that. Like he seems to want to go to like whoever he's interested in.
Yeah.
It's interesting, because his whole concept of YouTube breaks against the norm, doesn't it? Probably, like people say you've got to do short format or else, because people don't have the attention spans or whatever. All his are long form interviews, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And he doesn't necessarily just stick to famous guys like most people wouldn't know who he was. Yeah. But the studio guys do, and of course everybody knows Ricky Doan. That stuff, that was Michael playing on that, and a lot of that interview as they talk about that's really cool stuff, man. I love that.
I just remembered James Taylor's coming to
New Zealand.
He's playing in Auckland. Yeah. Got tickets for that. But Michael Landau's not playing on this tour. He's got Dean Parks on guitar, which should be interesting.
I wasn't sure who was playing guitar, but I know who the drummer is. Because Roger Fox, as soon as he saw it advertised, he flicked off an email to Steve Gadd and was like, "Are you doing the James Taylor thing in New Zealand?" And Gadd was like, "Yep, I'm on that one." So I was like, right, I've got to go now. I haven't got my ticket yet. I should actually get around to doing that.
I think Landau's doing a gig with Eric Johnson that kind of conflicts with this, so he may have just decided to sit that.
You've got a gig that's better than playing with James Taylor.
or it may have been booked first.
No, I know. I'm just kidding, but because there is no gig better than James Taylor. But do you know what I mean? It's like you're that awesome that Eric Johnson or James Taylor are your options.
Yeah.
Sort of says it all, doesn't it?
I had this once, got this call in India to open for Slash when he played there, and I was like super chuffed, but I realized I couldn't do it because we had been booked to play in Singapore with the Bollywood band, and the visas had been booked already. So unfortunately, I had to,
I've had that a few times, and it poses a moral question, doesn't it? Because you start going, man, this is a good opportunity for me, but I kind of have to honor it, Because if you bail and someone's gone through all that, that's bad karma, isn't it? You know what I mean?
And plus, I mean, you wouldn't jeopardize a regular gig for like a one-off, something like that. You kind of have to look in terms of the long term and, just keeping everyone happy.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
There's so many courses I find about, guitars, and you like, be the best session guitar player and whatever. They should have an entire course about how to get paid.
It's funny you say that though, man. When I taught at the university in Wellington, I said to them, look, we need to have a module in the program about like the business side of music, Yep. And they were like, oh no, we're not going to do that. We're an academic institution. We're not a training ground, And I was like, whatever. Next year, I asked them same thing. I'm like, we need to have a business thing. The students need to know about this stuff, Anyway, when my daughter was born, I got one of my students in to come and sub on the gig. Because funny enough, my daughter was born on her due date.
Okay.
And like hardly any babies are ever born on their due date. But I was doing a TV show out at TVNZ, and we had 3 weeks of filming every day, all day and all night. And the one day off was the due date. And I said to my wife beforehand, should I even do this gig? And she's like, yeah, do the gig. We'll need the money probably. Okay. So the due date, and she arrived on the due date. So, but I took the following night off because I was like, so I got the student to come and do that. And they said to him, oh, can you send us an invoice for the show that you did, And he said, what's an invoice? And they were like, who is this guy you sent in? And I was like, But he didn't know what an invoice was. And I was like, oh, no, it was just embarrassing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really think the business side of it is so important.
Sure.
But you know how it is. If you were teaching that kind of side of it, you would probably be super unpopular with people. It's like a rhythm guitar course. It's the most important thing that anyone needs to know how to do, and nobody wants to. Like, of my YouTube videos, the worst performing ones are usually the ones more about rhythm guitar. And you do anything about minor pentatonic,
boom.
And they're the ones that everyone wants to see, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah. People sometimes they ask you, like, how do I break out of the pentatonic box? Like, first thing to see is the pentatonic scale is 5 notes out of the major scale, so you've got just 2 notes left, or minor scale, So start on adding those 2 notes in, and if you can't add any of them, you need to ask why you can't, and then what else could you do? Do you move them, maybe one flat, one sharp to start with?
There's so many myths
with those 2 notes, and then then you get into chromatics and so on and so forth. Like a flat 5 and all that stuff like that. But the simplest way to do this is like 5 out of 7. Just 7 minus 5 is 2. Add those 2 notes back.
But it's funny, isn't it, that people think that they're kind of stuck by the minor pentatonic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look at David Gilmour. I mean, he pretty much only really played minor pentatonic, but a few extra notes here and there and what have you.
Yeah.
But you would never ever say he was a blues player, because he didn't sound like a blues player, even though he was using that scale that you would use on the blues, right? But his whole thing was chasing melody.
Yeah.
And that's what I always say to people: if they're stuck with minor pentatonic, try and find better melodies.
Yep.
There's an infinite amount of possibilities when you start doing that. If you start looking for licks, well, then you're going to run out of ideas. But if you're chasing melodies and
and you can steal melodies from anywhere, from singers. I love stealing melodies from singers, And no one's heard those melodies on guitar, but you've heard them before. So it'll, ring a bell somewhere at the back of their head.
Totally.
Like how many times have I played? And it could be over that chord. Or whatever, but I'm always one for that, don't rely on guitar players for your sources of melody lines. Steal from sax players, violin players,
Piano
singers.
players, everybody.
Yeah, if everyone. Yeah,
Everyone.
No melody is sacred. Just take everything.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And it's funny, once you start doing that, you start going, well, now my pool of guitar players I was stealing from is this big, but now if I have piano players, sax players, and it becomes infinite, doesn't it? Especially singers. Like, there's so many, there's more singers than anything else probably in the world, right? So,
Yep.
And how especially when it comes to phrasing,
The funny thing is, we're talking about David Gilmour playing the blues. There is an album by Paul Rogers called Muddy Waters Blues. And he's got like this bunch of guest guitar players. He's got Jeff Beck, Gilmour, Gary Moore, Buddy Guy, Trevor Rabin, all playing blues songs. Slash, for example. And, guys you normally wouldn't think that they were blues players, but it does, sound pretty good. So it's worth checking out that one particular album. It's called Muddy Waters Blues. And listen to the one that Gilmour plays. It's quite interesting. It sounds exactly like him, but
playing the blues.
Forced to operate in a
Yeah,
a
I can
blues
see
thing.
Slash being able to do it because he has a very bluesy kind of thing, and actually he used to do a lot of sessions. Like, people don't realize that, like, he's on Ray Charles albums and things like that. Because he can play, pretty fine kind of rock guitar, so people wanted that for their records. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, I'm gutted it's not Landau, but hey,
Yeah.
Dean Parks is pretty spectacular too,
Exactly. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think I'll enjoy the gig anyway.
right? I think Dean Parks did a gig with James Taylor, was it last year or the year before, and he played acoustic guitar. So
Okay.
something happened to James Taylor's hand, and so he couldn't play those beautiful finger picking things he did. So Dean Parks did it, apparently. So Landau's still playing electric, and Dean Parks playing acoustic, and then James Taylor sang. And yeah, I remember reading about it, seeing it somewhere, and that would have been blooming terrifying. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to be able to play lead lines, whatever, but like the guy that does that thing is still there singing next to you. You have to try and support, because it's so linked to his voice, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way he finger picks,
Do you remember those exotic pedals demo videos, like way back when, like probably early 2000s, where they would have the static blast going, and then you would have these players talk about their pedals? I don't know if you remember that, but one of them had Dean Parks, and I was like, who's this guy? And I like Googled his name, and I was like, holy shit, he's been on so many of my favorite recordings.
He's so the man, and he looks like an accountant, doesn't he? Looks like a guy that
Very
would have
unassuming, yeah.
unassuming, he's a
They just did, him and Tim Pierce, they did the Grammy pre-show, and Lee Sklar posted a video on his YouTube channel, so you can see their rigs. I think Dean Parks has got like this old Vox
multi-box. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, pedal board.
I saw that. I was so surprised by that. I thought, well, maybe he just knows it.
No, they actually do sound pretty good. I've tried one like ages back, and they were one of the few good sounding ones. I remember there was another guy, maybe Neil Giraldo, or someone like that, or maybe Pat Travers. They were just touring with Valvetronics into the effects returns of rentals.
Well, if you got it dialed in, that's the key thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because that's really the most important thing. And that was what was hard when I swapped over to the FM9, was I had to like start from scratch, and it wasn't dialed in. The first couple of gigs and the first couple of weeks were just like, oh my God, this is painful. And then once I got it figured out and knew how it worked and where everything was, and it's kind of just becomes your thing. That's one thing I like about having that rig now too, is it's sort of one rig for all the gigs, most of the stuff I do, recording whatever. Because I think for a long time I've been very caught up on the gear and not, it gets in the way of the playing. I need to so I've thought for a while, I just need to focus on playing the damn guitar better.
You know what I found is the answer to that is, like, you gotta have enough gear to a point where forgotten about like one piece, and then like you're like, oh, I forgot about. Let me see what that sounds. And so it's like buying a new piece of gear, and you just come back. But the thing is, you don't have to spend any money because you already own it.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems new to you. It's like a goldfish swimming around the bowl and forgetting it's been there.
Yeah, it's like having your own library or something. Just like, oh, I'll try that. I haven't tried that in a long time. But
That's funny.
I'd been to a point where like I was like, nah, I'm done, modding stuff and trying different things and everything. But I just got this Marshall 2x12 I was telling you about, and it's got G12 H30 speakers. And this mate of mine was like, hey, do you want to swap those for a pair of vintage 30s? And then my brain starts thinking, hang on, I've got another cab with two G12 65s. I could put one vintage 30 and one in that and one, and then so I'll have the same, thing between the two cabs, which will actually sound, to my ears a lot better than what's already, in there. But then you're going to change the resale value of it, and is it worth taking that risk? And finally, I'm like, the sound should be the thing. So we're going to do a test tomorrow. He's going to bring over the speakers. We're going to put them in, listen to it, and if it does sound better, then I'll do the swap.
Yeah, it's great that you're always searching for it, though, right? Because I think, like, just because I'm using that setup now, I'm tweaking all the time. Even today, I did a little bit of a dial in on a bit of a reverb to get it, a certain kind of way. Yeah, I don't think you should ever settle, like, to try and push the most out of your
Have you ever had the perfect tone and you come back the next day and it's still the perfect tone?
No, never.
It never happens.
It never happens, does it? Yeah, exactly. I've definitely had gigs where I've gone away going, man, my tone, I was really happy with that. And I've had
come to
far
the point
more...
where I've put a dot on the volume knob with the, permanent marker and everything. It still doesn't sound the same.
Man, I've had far more gigs where I'm unhappy with the tone. But it's interesting. My friend Bruce Foreman used to always say that you don't have to love your tone.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stayed with me. You don't have to love it. You just have to.
Yeah.
In other words, get on with playing. If it's not happening,
you
do
have
what
to
you
be able
can.
to work with it. It can't be so bad that it's bugging you like in a bad way.
But and you can't let it affect your performance.
Yeah.
That's the key thing, I think.
Yeah.
And too many people do. They get a bad tone and then they all of a sudden just go, "Whoa, it's going to be a crappy gig," and they give up.
Yeah.
And hopefully you're surprised, and hopefully you go away from it going, man, that gig was really happening tonight. That's the way I look at it. A lot of it's out of your control anyway, I find, because it's down to the room.
Yeah.
If you're in a good...
also having enough experience to know how to transcend those, pitfalls, shall we say, or hurdles that come in the way.
And what have you got on this weekend? Have you got any gigs?
This weekend, no, actually no gigs this weekend. I think it's the following one that there's something on. So yeah, it's probably been like 2 or 3 weekends. Thankfully, I think because everything else right now is like really choco. You're just trying to even breathe on the weekend sometimes becomes hard. So before you just blink and it's gone, it's kind of good to have a bit of a break. But yeah. I look forward to, I think March there's a whole bunch of them. That's when that Bollywood tour happens. So there's like 4 gigs in Australia and 1 in Auckland.
No Wellington.
They probably count on the Wellington people coming to Auckland to watch that.
Yeah.
Even like the other big Bollywood access scene, they usually just focus on Auckland and rely on.
Everybody does. They go Auckland and they go, well, if our fans want to see us, they'll come up from Wellington. And I'm like, man, we never get any gigs. But I don't blame people because we don't have the right venues for it most.
But I think the Foo Fighters played there. You went to that gig, didn't you?
That's the first one in a long time that we've had in the stadium. And actually, surprisingly, they got it sounding good in there because usually the stadium is hard work. It's not a good acoustic space. The sound bounces around the roof everywhere. And man, that was killer though. They were so good.
Do they have Jack Black singing AC/DC as well?
No, he just did that in Auckland, but or maybe it was Christchurch, whichever one it was. But man, Dave Grohl's voice is killer. He has such a powerful voice that's just, and it's funny. There was a keyboard solo at one point, and he was out the back and smoking, and I was like, dude, like with a voice like that, just look after it. Nah, rock and roll lifestyle, But he was doing these big screaming rock loud things and then like really delicate vocal things and just rich tone. And he's a good guitar player. And the other guy, Chris Shiflett, was also a good guitar player. But the drummer was the guy really, for me, like that guy Josh Freese just stole the show.
Oh, yeah.
He was
He's a beast,
amazing.
that guy.
Yeah, he was like the perfect drummer for that band. Like he just played all the parts exactly as you'd want them to be heard, with the right sound and the right approach and the right feel. And then every so often he'd play something that just kind of sparked your you know, like he had chops to burn, but he didn't throw it in your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just it was very tastefully done, I thought.
He used to be in a band called A Perfect Circle. That's when I first heard him. I used to love
Yeah.
that band. When
And
they
Nine Inch
first came
Nails
out.
too. He was
Yeah.
in, you know, he's played with everyone in the kind of hard rock scene, and it's pretty much, you know. And now the Foo Fighters, and they're playing stadiums, and so it's one of the reasons I went was because it's a gig at the stadium in Wellington, and we just don't get gigs
Don't
at the
get too many of
stadium.
those, yeah.
So I thought I'm going to go to it for that reason. So I took my daughter, and she loved it. She was really into the gig. So it was loud, man. Though at one point, out of curiosity, I got my phone out and pulled the dB meter up, and it said it was 115 dBs, like
Wow.
constantly. And I didn't have earplugs, and I was
Yeah.
like, man. And then I had a loud ass gig the next night, and my ears were like shot. You know.
Yeah, let's wrap for this week. And thank you for watching this far. If you've been following along, we'll see
Yeah.
you next week, hopefully. That's it for Nick and me today. See you guys.
See you guys.